My friends, we stand on the precipice of the greatest battle our realm has ever faced. All who came before are looking down from their place among the stars.
Yeah, we can do this! We're going to crush them to a pulp!
Indeed, for we have been emboldened by the stories of warriors from across time and space. As you prepare for this fight, I ask that you think about the heroes of games like BioShock, Assassin's Creed.
Cut! What in the seven hells was that? Video games don't exist in Devine. Hey, everybody, sorry, traffic was nuts, the weather's on the fritz. How's the filming going for the Order of the Pawn TV show? Is everything moving along smoothly? Bradley, there you are. Ugh, it's going terribly. For starters, this guy sounds nothing like me, and he won't stop talking about video games.
These aren't just games. These are stories of our history. I've fought in countless battles. The fight for the planet Reach, the invasion of Helgen, the battle of Eden Prime, and I even stood upon the walls of Helm's Deep.
Aha! More video game references. Ugh, where did you find this guy, Bradley? He's an old character of mine from back when I worked at GameStop. You know, he has good rates. He's not charging us very much. Oh, so he's affordable. Well, that makes sense. Battle of Helm's Deep? More like the Battle of Helm's Cheap. Ugh, I'll be in my trailer. Finton, wait! Ugh, he's gone.
Perhaps we could mend this situation by recalling the struggles of heroes in games like BioShock, Assassin's Creed.
General Alistair, please, just go home.
All right. Can I at least take home a box of snacks from the snack bar?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Wait, Bradley, I have an idea on how to fix this scene.
Arnold, I swear, if you suggest one more time having a chopper show up in Devine again, I'm gonna lose my mind.
No! I think we should add a dragon. It's like a chopper, but for fantasy.
That's actually not a bad comparison.
Excuse me, Bradley.
Yes?
We has our costumes is ready.
Oh, I totally forgot we were having you fitted for Varrock Horde armor. Wow, that actually looks really good. I'm sorry, though. We're done filming for the day. You're gonna need to take it off.
Oh, I see. This is going to take us a while.
Listen, we'll get back to filming Order of the Pawn tomorrow. For now, I just have to save this as draft. Get it?
What?
I'm so confused.
Oh, hey, I get it. It's like the Saved as Draft podcast. Thank you, announcer. Glad someone got the joke. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 75 of the Saved as Draft podcast. We have a huge episode today, so I'm going to keep this intro light so we can get right into it. This week was pretty good up until recently. I'm still dealing with final details regarding the ongoing storm, as I like to call it, that's been happening with my house, with my job, with everything. And then this morning, discovered that the fridge is on its way out. So more about that towards the end of the episode. But yeah, suffice to say, it hasn't been exactly a relaxing weekend so far. But hey, we're moving on. And in the meantime, I've been working on some really amazing stuff behind the scenes that I'll share as well in the final segment. I originally had a timeline in mind for that, but given the sudden upswing of stress here, I'm going to have to rethink things. But anyway, those are all details that I'll share towards the end of the episode. Work is happening, though, with both Devine and Clenchport, so got some good news coming there, as well as another announcement that I'll make in today's episode. So, Anyway, let's get into the introduction here. As you may have noticed, I did a live interview earlier this week with Tom Schechter over on Substack. That interview's audio will be included later in the episode here, since it was an interview for Saved as Draft, but we did a little experiment with a live stream earlier this week, like I said, and I posted that video on Substack as well. So you have multiple ways to check out that interview, but like I said, if you're already here and listening, you'll hear the full thing later in this episode. I can also confirm that next week's episode will feature a brand new interview with author E.H. Lau, who just wrapped up a slice of life comic series here on Substack called Audrey the Unicorn Girl. That was an insanely fun interview, so make sure you come back next week as well to give it a listen on episode 76. And one last thing, Tamsin G's Cozy Quill Fantasy Writing Competition is closing signups on June 30th, which is coming up soon. So if you're interested in joining that competition for the potential to win a real cash prize and receive feedback for your work, I'll leave a link to sign up in the show notes. And that's all our housekeeping out of the way. Today's episode will have all our usual segments. So we'll start with the community spotlight, then we'll go to the weekly shoutouts, our power-up prompt stories for this week, followed by some writing discussion. Then I'll sit down for the interview with Tom Schechter, and we'll wrap things up with a look at next week on Substack. So a full episode for you all this week. I hope you brought popcorn or a snack, because we're going to be here a while. So let's get into it with our community spotlight. All right, and as I've been saying this month, since June is Pride Month, I've been featuring authors in this segment from the LGBTQ plus community. I put out a note prior to June asking for anyone interested in being featured, and I had a few responses, so I kind of been featuring those folks here each week since I have their permission. This week, I want to spotlight my friend Vonnie G. Clemens Jr. Now, I've mentioned Vonnie and his work on the show here before, but it bears repeating because he is a wonderful writer, narrator, storyteller, and just an all-around great human being. Vonnie's bio on Substack says that he's a queer writer whose superpowers are directly proportional to his confidence. I love that. He has several ongoing serials on Substack, including Ruin Runes, which is fantasy, and October Perpetua, which is sci-fi. Another series Vonnie's been working on is Bedtime with Cooper, and I have to insist that you check this one out. It's a live video series where he reads stories from Substack authors to his dog Cooper, and it is just wonderful. It's wholesome and hilarious, and he reads some great stories. He actually did a Devine story that he read to Cooper a while back. It was one of the sadder ones, but honestly, watching that stream has become a core memory for me. It was such a wonderful experience. So yeah, check the show notes for a link to Vonnie's profile, and subscribe to check out all the amazing work he's doing. And Vonnie, thank you for all your support as well, my friend. I truly appreciate you. All right, next up, we'll dive into this week's shoutouts, but first, a quick word from our sponsor. Today's episode of the Saved as Draft podcast is sponsored by Dream Drafts. Hey there. This is Chill Bradley. Now, don't try to fix your podcast app. You haven't accidentally skipped to the Mindful Moments segment. You are indeed in the sponsor segment. Let me explain. For many articles now, I've been posting Mindful Monday checkpoints every Monday, a series that encourages mindful practice and examination of introspective quotes. I'm here to tell you that Mindful Monday checkpoints are being retired in favor of something that I think will be even better.
Hey, why is it so quiet in here? And what's with the music?
Arnold, I'm trying to record something as Chill Bradley. Can you keep it down?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll get out of here.
There we go. Sorry for the interruption. Today, I'm here to introduce a new mini podcast series that I'm launching. It's called Dream Drafts, and it's a mindfulness podcast specifically directed to writers and creatives.
Hey, have you seen the other announcer guy? He tried meditation the other day, and I think he may have chilled out a little too much. I haven't seen him.
No, I haven't seen him. I'm trying to record something.
Ah, right. Total silence. I gotcha.
Okay, I'm back. Dream Drafts will release soon, on Mondays, with 10 to 15 minute episodes that allow you to pause and join me for a little guided meditation as we reflect on a topic and a quote. Paid subscribers will get early access and weekly episodes. After each episode releases, 1 week later, they will become available to all. My hope is that this new podcast will be an even better way for my fellow creatives to learn mindfulness and to keep their stress levels in check and their inspiration high in a world that seems intent on trying to drain all the life out of us.
Bradley, there you are. Why aren't you whispering into the microphone? Alright, that's it. No more Chill Bradley. Start your week off right with a calm, inspiring, quiet moment. Join Chill Bradley on Dream Drafts every Monday with early access to new episodes for paid subscribers. Coming soon to The Writer's Journey and everywhere you get podcasts.
And we're back. Every week on Tuesday, I post a thread in my subscriber chat where you get to share links to your latest work for a chance to be featured on one of 3 shows, including this one. I pick 5 at random each week for this segment, where I'll offer my thoughts and narrate an excerpt from the piece as well. And a quick side note, we've had some people submitting links multiple times across each week lately, so as another quick reminder, we do keep a backlog of everything that's been submitted between all the shows that it's featured on, or could be featured on, so we do have everything saved to go back to as needed. And with that out of the way, let's dive in for this week's shoutouts. First up this week is 3 Fish on the Wall by Asteria Geisterbloom. This is a short story that defies description in the best way possible. There's a story here, or really a cycle, but it repeats and adds new layers each time. It's this style that walks the line between poetry and prose. Many of the lines just leap right off the page, and certain phrases are intentionally repeated throughout to drive them home. But it's all so surreal and packed with this unique voice that you'll find yourself leaning in further and further as it goes on. It just pulls you deeper and deeper into the story. And by the end, it'll feel like the story kind of knows a secret about the universe, and if you look close enough, it might just share it. And maybe it does. This piece is just vague enough to allow for all kinds of interpretation, which I really like. I would actually love the chance to sit down and really break this apart and discuss it with a few other authors at some point. It's that good. But beyond the strange and surreal nature of the events that it describes, the technical work on display here is superb. The word choice is rich and evocative. It paints a vivid picture in the mind, which is something Asteria has always been very good at. And I have to call out the use of second person here as well. The way the story addresses the reader and kind of taps playfully on the fourth wall brings all these pieces together beautifully. It's one of my favorites that I've read from this author, and that is really saying something because Asteria does stupendous work. Let's check out an excerpt. Your heart skips a beat. Maybe you should just have eaten something. Feel sick later. You've got to learn one day. You don't want to be scared of it forever, do you? The rain grows louder. The drops spill bigger, hit your feet. Fish need water, and your eyes need to close, so you go back inside. The next morning, the rain has stopped. On your way out the door, you stop by the 3 fish on the wall. Reds and blues. Orange. 3 eyes. 3 mouths. 5 fins. It looks as pretty as it looks silly. 2 eyes look at you. You can't find the 5th fin, but you don't have time for that shit. There's no tunnel today. No need to take your earbuds out to see better. If at some point you stop seeing dreams, it means every version of you in other parallel realities has died. You're on your own. There's just you left. You stare at your phone, read it again and again. You don't remember dreaming about yourself. There's something going on at night, sure, but it's not about you. It's missing the bus. It's sinking into the asphalt of the street, trying to catch it. It's sitting in the coal basement. It's struggling to breathe and chasing after signs in the street you can't read. That evening, you're afraid to go to sleep. Drink some water, you hear. Well, have heard. The phone call you look forward to all day is long over. You're looking a little longer at yourself in the mirror. Wonder if you've ever seen yourself in a dream. I just love it. I love narrating it. I love reading that story. As you can see, it just has so many elements going on. And then the way that it plays with like structure and rhythm, it's just so unique. And it's beautifully put together, and it's just a wonderful piece of writing. So please check it out. Like I said, you can find links to all these in the show notes.
Our second shout out this week is Concrete Angel by Mina Howell. This is a poem using one of Tina Crossgrove's images that she shares as prompts here on Substack, and as is the case with all of Mina's poetry, it's another winner. With this piece, she repeats the phrase, "they killed the goddess," in each stanza, and I love that repetition because each stanza reframes that phrase in a new light. And the rhyme structure here adds to that steady rhythm as well, further driving home the themes of the piece for me. And if I may, I wanted to share how this piece reminded me of a poem that I did many years ago. It's a nice correlation here that I think makes sense to compare. So, back in college, I did a piece called Creature of the Sea. It was about this strange image that I found online of a humanoid-looking fish that had appeared on the internet. Now, I don't know if it was real or not. It didn't look photoshopped, but it also was like nothing I'd ever seen before. In any case, the story that went along with the image was that some fishermen had caught it, and they took photos of it, and then right afterward they killed and ate it. Yeah. The discovery of a lifetime, and they turned it into food. Now, I think Mina's piece here hones in on something similar. In her piece, we killed the goddess, in my mind, because we can't have nice things. We want control, and we want to preserve the illusion of said control so badly that we'll devour the divine, so to speak, just to keep it. And I feel like my poem was coming in on something similar there. And that's a terrible and frightening truth, but honestly, it's the nature of humans in many cases. So I love how this piece illustrates that with just a few stanzas. Let's check out a quick excerpt here. They killed the goddess to make room for a lie, the ultimate narcissist, the big man in the sky. They killed the goddess, encased her in stone, made her a servant, forced her to atone. Notice that line about how they killed the goddess to make room for a lie. That's what I'm talking about, and that's where some of my interpretation comes from. It's the lengths we'll go to keep the illusion of reality intact that we want. Fantastic work. Great stuff. Link in the show notes. Our third shout-out this week is The Lore by Alden Crow. So this is a really interesting post because the title The Lore refers to a series where the author plans to tell their story, who they are, why they write, their struggles, their successes, and so on. Now, they use a pen name, so the post talks about that line between details and keeping things private in a series like this. I gotta say, I love the idea of a series that gives us deeper insight into the author themselves, and I'm always up for that. But beyond the overview of the series that they're planning to do, this post also includes a poem that was written in response to a Mary Oliver poem, who is one of the author's favorite poets. A little 2-for-1 deal here, I really like it. The poem in this piece is spectacular. It's introspective, authentic, and it gives me a good picture of who this person is and what they've been through. At the end, the post also says that this is the story of a young boy from Brazil who became a father and poet in the US. It sounds like quite the journey indeed. Let's check out an excerpt from the poem here. Holding love in your arms as they take their first breaths. Moving across the country for music and finding love. In my wild life, I've worked to save and help others at the expense of my sanity. Learning that mindfulness is my solace, though the fires may persist in my dreams. Today my wild life is feeding hungry mouths, playing in the park, snuggles, and teaching my son to ride a bike. Beautiful work. I love that snapshot there. Really looking forward to reading more from this author, and remember to find links to all these in the show notes. Definitely check this one out. I really like what this author's doing. Our fourth shout out this week is Salt and Mango by Ocean Being. So this poem is actually for one of my prompts. I believe it was a Halls of Pandemonium prompt last month, and it asked for a story or poem about a recurring dream. The poem here stands out immediately with its beautiful, elegant flow, supported by exceptional word choice. The imagery is on another level. It targets every single one of the senses. Sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. It transports you into the scene beautifully. And beyond the sensory elements, the poem has really rich detail. For example, there's a line about salt and sand on the character's legs and how she drags her nails through them as the grains loosen and fall from her skin. And really, when you zoom out, this is a poem about a dream where someone's enjoying time on a beach eating a ripe mango. It's a simple premise and a beautiful moment, but the way the poem brings it to life here is where the magic happens. You feel rooted in this moment, in this dream, and it's rich with all those details as well. Let's check out an excerpt so you can see what I mean. White salt dries across her thighs, in pale streaks left by the tide. She drags her nails through them, feeling the grains loosen, falling from warm skin. The water pulls at her ankles, and her heart answers back. Mango softens between her fingers, warm from the heat. Her teeth sink into the flesh. Juice spills over her mouth, thick and golden, running down her chin, sliding across her lips. I mean, I can practically taste the mango, and I haven't had a mango in forever, but that is really, really good. I love that excerpt there, and like I said, that's just a couple stanzas in the larger poem, so be sure to check it out, the link in the show notes, because you really kind of have to see the whole thing to get the feel for the scene, but man, it's really good, really well done. Our final shout out this week is The Witch by J.R. Phillips. This was a poem submitted to a contest prior to its publication here on Substack. The post doesn't specify which contest, but I've done a few pieces like this myself where I post the full piece on Substack once the competition was over, and I think it's a great way to get more views on your work. Now, with this piece, there's a lot of really awesome elements. For starters, the concept here is that it describes a witch who was burned at the stake during what we can probably assume was something like the Salem witch trials. It's terrifying, but as the poem goes on, we realize that this isn't the first time they've died. They promise to come back, and they do. It's insinuated that their soul returns again and again, and that's reinforced by the way the poem repeats specific lines. It's very chilling as you're reading, and the lines that the author chose to repeat just add to that atmosphere. It almost feels like a mantra by the end. Let's check out an excerpt. They used to use stones. They used to use wood. Sticks and bones. Spirit in a hood. She shifted and changed. Each time she was hanged. She'll never be gone for good. Run from me. Hide from me. That's what she said. I'll never be dead. That's what she said. That's what she said. So I gave her a root, a tendril to hold. We are the same, meant to be bold. Her blood sank into my soil, her last breath a gift, my wood her new home, until the full moon shone. Oh, amazing. I love the atmosphere there. And yet again, every week I'm blown away by the sheer talent that surrounds me here on Substack. These poems and stories that I feature in the shoutouts every episode are just on another level. So thank you to everyone who submitted. And now we'll switch gears to look at our power-up prompt stories from this past week. But first, a quick mindful moment. Hey there. This is Chill Bradley. No, you're not crazy. This is the second time you've heard from me in this episode. I'm here for today's mindful moment. Here's a quote to consider. Wandering Prompt, Episode 75. Write a story or poem inspired by the following quote. I can never read all the books I want. I can never be all the people I want and live all the lives I want. Sylvia Plath. 1,000 words or less. First to submit a link in the episode comments wins. Good luck. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. All right, and we're back. As promised, I've got a story from last week's prompt that was submitted just past the deadline. So before we dive into the numerous entries for this week's power-up prompt, let's check out The Putrid Delta by Laurie McIntosh. Okay, so this piece is really interesting right off the bat. We're introduced to a character named Oscar, who has become obsessed with the ecological disaster that I provided as part of last week's prompt. In the story, Oscar applies to work at the lab of Silas Price, and when he gets in, he immediately starts digging through the files and research in search of answers. He comes across something peculiar, and the tension in the story builds as he isolates the mysterious file to see what's going on. That tension continues until it reaches a feverish crescendo right before the final line when it appears that Dr. Price himself has arrived. Now, I love this story. It really pulled me into the world with all the details and characterization, and the ending had me dying to know what happens next. So, Laurie, if you're listening, and I hope you are, please let me know if you have plans to continue this story. It sounds like you do, but you've got me hooked. So I think I'm not the only one either. So we want to know what happens next. But thank you again, my friend, for submitting a story for last week's prompt, and I hope you enjoyed the shout out here. I know I enjoyed reading it. All right, now we're on to this week's power-up prompt stories. So this week's power-up prompt was open genre, meaning you could write whichever genre you wanted. Your setting was the mountains that remember, where time flows oddly and memories seem to be trapped. Your character was the guide, who seems to know what's going on there, and your conflict was the sins of the past related to what caused the mountains to be the way they are. In this segment, I'll dive into all the entries from this week's prompt, and I'll discuss what made each story stand out to me. Given that I cover all the stories, we won't be doing narrated excerpts here for the sake of time, but I tried to give each story a good chance in the spotlight. So let's see what we got, and we have a lot of entries this week, so get ready. First up, for this week's power-up prompt stories, is The Perilous Peaks of the Pernian Peaks by Gregory Blair. And that is P-E-E-K followed by P-E-A-K. So we have two versions of peak there in the title, and I love that wordplay. This one here is a narrative poem that immediately starts off strong with the first stanza about the deaths that have happened on these mountains and the secrets they hide. I love the fourth stanza here as well, where Gregory has some phenomenal word choice with lines that describe the strange phenomena on the mountain and imagery that includes visions of colors, which he likens to the lens of a kaleidoscope. It reminds me of a line from an older story of mine where I described a character's eyes as if they were fractured kaleidoscopes, and in that story I said that they were tumbling the secrets of the universe. It was something like that. It's a line that I'm very proud of and I think about often. So that poem brought me back to that story, and I don't see the mention of a kaleidoscope very often, so I really enjoyed that. The poem goes on to introduce our guide character and hints at what's to come by the end, bringing us to a very nice conclusion. Nice job from Gregory here, and a fantastic start to this week's entries. Next up for this week's power-up prompts is The Mountain Woman by J.M. Gooding. And again, with this piece, we have a perfect example of a compelling opener. J.M. takes us through the history of the mountain, listing off the things that sat upon the land where we find ourselves. The final line of that first paragraph is excellent too. It says the hotel and spa on the land has enough glass to convince people they're experiencing nature while remaining safely separated from it. I love that he calls out that illusion. It makes for great imagery. And we join our guide here, who works at the hotel, just as he sits down with a group of visitors to tell them a story around a campfire. It's a perfect setup. And JM weaves that actual story into the post here as well, as if we're sitting by that same fire and hearing the story ourselves. And I'm someone who has lived in Appalachia region of the U.S. for many years now, and I love how JM brings in the history of the mountains and the mystery surrounding them. When he brings in the mountain woman from the title, too, he mentions that the legends say she was already old when the first humans walked this land. Another perfect example of some nice haunting detail there. I think the most triumphant part of this post is how it manages to feel like a true and ancient piece of Appalachian lore. Fans of J.M. Gooding know that he does really great work with existing folklore, and I believe that experience and knowledge is what allows him here to create tales like this that feel like they've always been there. And am I jealous of that skill? Yes, absolutely. But honestly, I'm also just very happy that I get to read his work because it's always top tier. Every time he submits, he does something incredible. And like I said, when folklore is involved, get out of here. It's so good. I cannot recommend this author enough. Be sure to check the show notes for links to all of these, and give JM's work some love. I promise you'll enjoy it. Next up this week is The Fourth Point by Mary Ellen Brady. Something I love about this piece is this one line that Mary Ellen wrote that reads, "Cold tea was the universe's way of telling you that time had opinions about your location." I love that little saying. The story opens with our guide character noting a shift on their map, something that's been happening for over a decade now. It's very intriguing, and it leads us to meet Karma, who comes to our guide seeking help with navigating the mountain. Through their conversation, we get that signature Mary Ellen Brady world building. There's a mix of history and spirituality here that makes this place feel so real right off the bat. And as the story goes on, Mary Ellen introduces a really cool narrative element where it turns out that Karma's arrival is far from coincidence. Now, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but it's woven into the existing history of the world here perfectly. And by the end, we get another nod to that T line that I mentioned, bringing things full circle. As always, I'm super impressed with the concentration of world building, characterization, and satisfying narrative arcs that Mary Ellen can achieve in just a few thousand words. It's really impressive to behold, and I love seeing it every time. Next up on this week's Power Up Prompt Stories is Trees All Stained in Glass by Jorving. Now that is a title. Something I've quickly begun to appreciate about Jorving's work is how they build tension into all their stories. And seriously, pick any of them. You'll notice how carefully they craft this unseen fear behind the scenes in stories that have it. There's a careful build-up in all their stories that I've read in this genre, and that really keeps you hanging on every word. With this one, we get some great backstory and setup before our character finds themselves in a very tense conversation. This eventually gives way to a paranormal investigation of sorts, and it's here where all that build-up finally pays off. And pacing is one of those things that's really difficult to get right, especially in written form. So when I see it done really well like this, I have to pause and celebrate it. Definitely check this one out. It's a wild ride. Link in the show notes. Our next power-up prompt story for this week is You Ain't Never Had a Friend Like Me by Genesis McClure, aka Every Root, Every Thorn. So, as I mentioned last week, this author has a vast multiverse that connects their stories, and this piece is a continuation of that. Also, as I've mentioned before, this author does amazing work with multi-POV storytelling. The entry for this week has some really breakneck pacing and satisfying action, but there's still time to stop and enjoy the dialogue too. There's this one line that makes a lot more sense in context, but I'm going to read it here because it's so funny. It says, "Don't you dare, you cosmic nutsack of a tree." I mean, that is a great line of dialogue. But seriously, this is a really fun entry. It points back to the Putrid Delta from last week's power-up prompt in a cool way as well. It's got something for everybody, and I love that this author's work allows people to dive in and appreciate it, but then it also has plenty of things to reward people who are more familiar with the broader universe. Great balance. Check it out in the show notes. Next up for this week's power-up prompt stories is Slipping by Jennifer Jorgensen. So it's funny, I can actually remember when Jennifer first submitted a story to one of my power-up prompts sometime last year, if I'm not mistaken, and this author is someone who had come out of nowhere, but I was immediately a fan of her work. Every time she contributes to one of these prompts, it somehow manages to be better than the last time. And with this story, she sets things up with all the pieces of the prompt and then drops in a twist. Our mountain here has become a tourist hotspot because there are rumors going around that the time slips can potentially make you younger, take years off your life. Now, granted, they can and have also trapped people and made them older as well, so there's a danger of losing time too. But that doesn't stop people from trying. Our protagonist, the guide, is tired of the usual folk who try to capitalize on the rumor, but in today's story, they cross paths with someone truly intriguing. The mystery surrounding the second character is palpable from minute one, and the way Jennifer slowly unravels that truth behind him and his motivations is perfectly done. I was so immersed. I was completely hooked, and on the edge of my seat the entire time. And when the reveal finally comes, it's everything I hoped it would be. It's satisfying, logical, stunningly well written, and emotionally gratifying. It all ends with a note from the author about the Welsh tale that inspired it, and how this was her way of giving these characters a better ending than the one they got in the original story. And let us not forget, Jennifer also included a musical pairing here, which you know I love to see. In this case, it was Fly Like an Eagle by Steve Miller Band, and those lyrics just hit perfectly after reading this story. Time keeps on slippin', 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 indeed. Man, this was incredible. A must-read, in my opinion, and one of my favorite power-up prompt stories ever, if I'm being honest. So, if you would like, hit pause on the podcast here, scroll down to the show notes, find the link, and read it. I promise you will not be disappointed. And moving right along, our next power-up prompt story this week is The Callan Donimtom by Mercedes de Santiago. Something really cool about that title is that it's explained in the introduction of the story as being a word in the local ancient language that translates to the mountains that remember. I love that detail. And it adds just a ton of depth and atmosphere to the setting within the first paragraph. It's amazing work. And in this story, we join our guide from the prompt as they prepare a group for their journey up the mountain. The group begins to encounter strange time slips, but there's one scene I really enjoy that's the focal point of the story, where they encounter a group of ancient warriors who had died centuries ago. As per the prompt, these warriors seem to be trapped here, repeating this moment over and over again due to the strange nature of the mountain. It's a very tense scene that perfectly captures the spirit of the prompt. It's about what happens when the past and the present collide, and Mercedes handles that theme wonderfully here. This was a gripping read. Be sure to check the show notes for a link. Next up for this week's Power Up Prompt Stories is A Cover-Up of Olympic Proportions by Bradley Hurt.
With this story, I'm once more reminded of how many directions a prompt can go. Case in point, Bradley's story here stars an Olympic athlete who was once a professional snowboarder and is now investigating the disappearance of a fellow member of the snowboarding community named Michael Toulon. Now, our protagonist knows more about the truth here than they're letting on, which I won't spoil, but it's a fantastic setup. And Bradley uses this to play right into the conflict from this week's prompt about the sins of the past. In this case, the nature of the mountain means that our protagonist's past literally comes back to haunt them. That right there is a wholly unique premise for this prompt, aside from everything we've seen this week, and I love that diversity in how writers approach this with different concepts. And here it makes for a tense story that leans nicely into horror, which again, we have an open genre prompt here, so I love to see a horror story make its way into the running. Just great example here of how to take a prompt in a unique direction, and another example of why I love doing prompts in general. So shout out to Bradley for doing this. This was fantastic. And remember, links to all these in the show notes. Next up, we've got The Mountains Hold by Richard Loder. Now, for those unaware, Richard also has a connected universe known as the Diluvian. And I say that because if you're not already a fan of his work, I recommend diving in beyond just one story. Much like Lay's chips, you won't be able to have just one. But I'll stop and talk about one story for the sake of time here. So with this piece, Richard immediately got my attention with this scene at the beginning that had our characters witness one of the strange events that happens on the mountain. In this case, it's a river running backwards, but what I love is how Richard pauses to reflect on the details. We learn how the fish are trapped in this anomaly, forced to swim backward while other creatures like bears try to catch them, only to have the fish pulled from their grasp by this fracture in time. It's a simple scene, but it's incredibly effective at showcasing the strangeness of the setting. And as the story goes on, Richard gives us more insight into the characters and the true cause of all this strangeness within his world. Now, as someone who has a connected universe of my own, too, actually, this story made me feel like I was right at home in the realm of Devine since it has dwarves and mentions Norse realms like Jotunheim. I felt right at home in this setting, and it reminded me why I love reading Richard's work. It balances detail with heart, and it makes for a truly satisfying read. Check it out at the link in the show notes. And now, for our final power-up prompt story this week, I'm looking at Ben Muckdui by Verdant Butterfly. This is a piece inspired by Scottish folklore, and you know I'll take any excuse to read and talk about Verdant Butterfly's exceptional poetry. And this one is indeed exceptional. From the word choice to the beautiful rhyme structure to the way it carries this sense of regret and melancholy. It's just beautifully rendered. And that's where Verdant Butterfly really shines in her work. She can bring out the root of a story or a myth or folklore in this case, or anything else really, and show you the deepest emotions that it can convey on the page. And honestly, I really do struggle to describe how well this all comes together, so if you'll permit me for a moment here, I'd like to read an excerpt, even though I normally don't do those for power-up prompts. But this is incredible poetry, and I really want you to get the feeling that I got while reading it. So here's a few stanzas from this piece. He turned and climbed the frozen ridge, without a word to say. I followed where the gray man led, along the haunted way. Each drift became another year, each stone a hidden shame. Old promises I'd cast aside, returned and spoke my name. The friend I failed, the trust I broke, the kindness left undone. They waited on that mountain path, like shadows in the sun. I begged the towering guide to halt. He never looked behind. For every step I wished to flee, he climbed within my mind. I mean, come on. That is so good. And the craziest part is that all of her poetry is at this level of quality. She just never misses. It's really a sight to behold. And I feel like in this case, she not only did the legend justice, but she enhanced it, deepened it, and gave it new life in my mind. And again, that's an incredible skill. So, once more, a big thank you to Verdant Butterfly and everyone else who submitted power-up prompt stories and poems this week. This is really amazing work, honestly. I don't, I never know like how to describe just how incredible this work is every week because it just gets better and better. It's insane. And this week, we had over 10 submissions for this one prompt alone, which is up there with some of the most popular power-up prompts. Honestly, it just makes me so happy and grateful, and honestly, it's a bit humbling to see people get inspired and share just top-tier work like this based on a prompt that I gave them. I mean, that is just amazing. Our next power-up prompt will be out tomorrow, Sunday, June 28th, and if you want to vote on what the genre is, head on over to this past week's post before the poll closes. Now, if you're listening to this, it's possible that it's already closed, but in any case, keep in mind, every power-up prompt
post has a poll at the bottom to vote on the next week's genre. So if you want to get involved with that, keep an eye out. Either way, I'll see you Sunday for the next Power Up prompt. And with that finished, we'll head right into this week's writing discussion. All right, and now it's time for our weekly writing discussion. This week, I asked you all to tell me if you'd rather have your work adapted into a TV series or a film. This one was inspired by my interview this week with Tom Schechter, coming up soon in this episode. At one point, he likens the chapters of his book to episodes of a TV show, which I think is a great comparison. So yeah, I guess if you ask me this question, I'd say that it kind of depends on the project. I think my novel, for example, could be done as a movie if it's done right, but something like Devine would be far better served as a TV show. So, of course, something else I would consider is the difference in budget, too. I mean, a movie tends to have a larger budget and therefore more space for effects and stuff like that could support some of my wilder ideas. But the space of a TV show is crucial when you're working with a universe that has a lot of backstory and detail that's needed to fully enjoy it. So that's my 2 cents on it, but enough about me. Let's dive in and see what you had to say. Remember, you can contribute to these threads in my subscriber chat every Wednesday, and if you take the time to respond, I'll take the time to read your answers on the show. Let's dive in and see what everyone had to say about this topic. Do you want your work adapted into a film or TV show? Jumping right in, Jennifer Jorgensen says, "My work, long or short form, tends to be character-driven more than anything else. I think TV series ultimately allow for more character development simply because they allow for so much more screen time than a movie. So I would almost always vote TV series if given a choice. That said, I think there are 1 or 2 short stories I've written where I could see them working well as a movie because visually they could have much more impact on a large screen. Abscission comes to mind, written for the First Indulgence Challenge, as an example of this. Shout out to Jennifer for mentioning the First Indulgence Challenge. That was, of course, my October horror writing challenge last year. I remember Abscission. And yeah, please, while I'm around on planet Earth here, I would love for some big Hollywood executive or investor to pick up Jennifer's stories for a movie. I would love that. TV show, bring it all on. As I mentioned during her Power Up prompt, I love her work. So great answer from Jennifer to kick us off. Next up, Asteria Geisterbloom says, "That's so interesting. Really excited for the replies to this one. I think for the 444 series, I'd prefer a movie adaptation, especially if it's done in the style of really old Disney movies. Nothing beats the night scenes in old Disney movies, or the darker qualities of a Studio Ghibli movie. I think for a TV series, despite the 444 being a series of connected short stories, which would fit that structure, it's a little too irregular when it comes to POV. Just feels like a movie would be better for it. Also, very important, a movie can give prolonged screen time to Little Sir Menace and his shenanigans, and who wouldn't enjoy that?" Thank you so much to Asteria for that answer. Yeah, that's great. I love how Asteria considered kind of the the pros and cons of either there, and I have to agree with the shout out for old Disney movies. Obviously, Studio Ghibli, fantastic inspiration there. And yeah, as someone who does multiple POVs, I also have to kind of stop and think, because my novel, for example, has like 6 POVs. So how does that transfer to a movie, And to Jennifer's point in the first response there, TV shows do allow for more character development. I would agree with that. So yeah, I think Asteria is correct here with this assessment, and I absolutely agree with some of the balancing act here as to which format does what better. And I have to, before we move on, I have to say I love that joke about Little Sir Menace and his shenanigans. I have a Little Sir Menace of my own that Asteria sent me. She sent out little figures of him, and he definitely gets up to adventures here. So fantastic answer, really great stuff. Thank you to Asteria for that. Next up, J. Allen Winchester says, "Ooh, this is a good topic. I know I've shared my goals of transmedia with Substack, so this is obviously something I've considered. The Eclipse Saga feels like it should be a film series like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, for the sole purpose of film budgets for on-location filming, costumes, and effects. I feel that would best serve the story. The story would have an interesting feel as well, since the third-person perspective wouldn't include all the narration or inner dialogue, so I would have to adapt those moments into more intimate conversations to allow the audience to connect with the characters as they view them in and outside their soul. The Nature Calls saga would absolutely be a TV show, and I would also like it to be animated. The story unveils just like a TV show would, but the animation can convey information that live cinematography just can't capture. It's a really good point. I would love to see fan films of cosplayers, but the overall evolution of the characters, physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually, would take shape best that way. Not to mention the tonal shifts in the story would be captured better instead of building so many sets. The Dodecatheon saga is one I'm torn on. I would love to see actors because of how grounded a performance would be for the series, but a live-action series would put it on par with Game of Thrones in terms of length and budget. It would be super expensive. A cartoon would also be awesome because, like Nature Calls, there are just some things that manifest better in artwork than live action. The Greco are giants. 6 feet is short to them, and their tallest is over 9 feet. Humans live beside them, so their grand difference between them and their biracial children, the Xenoi, would be easier to capture animated. Though I would love to see Peter Jackson's technique he used for Lord of the Rings here. Just imagining it gives my love of practical effects ecstasy. Thicker Than Blood was inspired by a paranormal soap opera one of my babysitters watched when I was younger. That one I want live action because I want the grounded feeling with practical effects as much as possible. I would love to see a cast as diverse as the story has on TV, showing the lore and history I adapted come to life. Also, I want the pizzeria built. It's just as important as the Carpathian castle, dang it. I love that. Legacy of the Solar Order has meant to be a cartoon, so that's a no-brainer. Between the beautiful setting of the Neo-Atlantic Institute Island and the mythical world bleeding into a more natural one, the magic of animation is the way to go. Also, magical transformation sequences. Nice. To Cross the Divine would go either way, honestly, as long as it's live action. I've always thought the series felt like one of those dramas I watched when I lived in Japan, but with K-dramas and C-dramas on the rise, it would fit. The only reason I say it could be a film series and each book could fit in a movie format. The budget for a feature film would also make it that much more immersive, and the CGI could be a decent budget to work with. Sorry for the long reply. I got lots of thoughts of adaptations for my work. Apologies to the listeners for rambling. No apologies needed, Jaden. I always love reading your answers on the show here in this segment, and I love that you were able to kind of give us insight into every single one of your, current and ongoing projects. This is amazing. I mean, there's so much to pull apart here, but I love that you've given so much thought to it. And I hadn't considered animation as an option, which is funny because I'm working on an animated series. But yes, yeah, I've always been someone that's, I've always said that I think animation really has a lot of strength in the fact that it can portray things that are much more difficult or nearly impossible to portray in live action. So that's a really good point you brought up there. Thank you so much for that in-depth answer. Next up, Sarah Tinney says, I want to write stories that can be treated like a TV show, where you can jump in anywhere and immediately know what's going on, and the same characters have a new adventure each week. Maybe because this approach is used a lot in kids' books. Maybe my 2 Warden challenges that I wrote for Flash Fiction February could make a good movie with an awesome soundtrack. Hey, I'm telling you right now, if you can get a movie deal on one of those, I will absolutely give you full permission to create whatever you want in the Synaptic Sprawl mythos with those Warden characters. I love the idea, of someone's story set in my universe having that opportunity. So yeah, consider this my express permission to use the Synaptic Sprawl and the Wardens in anything you'd like, but especially that. So yes, very much appreciate that response from Sarah. And yeah, Sarah does do kids books, so I think it's interesting that she made that comparison there. And yeah, I mean, I always like the structure where it's like each episode is kind of a new adventure, as Sarah said. I think that's nice. So great answer there. Next up, Leanne Schaller says, miniseries, that lovely beast between TV show and movie. Even my longer serials could lend itself to this, although they might be more like a self-contained Chinese serial of 40 episodes, but others might be more like 4, 10, or 16 episodes. And yeah, really good point here from Leanne. I've actually, some of my favorite, kind of TV adaptations of all time were miniseries. One that comes to mind was, it's called The Lost Room, I believe. And it doesn't have the greatest acting and budget and all that stuff, but it had the coolest premise. And it was like a 4-episode miniseries. It was fantastic. I have it on DVD because I don't think it ever got released on Blu-ray or anything. It was too old for that. But yeah, The Lost Room is a great example of a phenomenal miniseries and how you can do that. So great answer there from Leanne.
Next up, Wendy Russell says, "This is such a fun question. The Murder Coat would be a TV series. Mysteries need room to breathe, and I'd want viewers theorizing between episodes. It would feature lots of beautiful location shots as a love letter to Wellington. RTSA is also television because it is the story of a TV series being made. It's all about relationships, character arcs, backstage drama, and the slow burn disasters people create for themselves. That's season-long storytelling. With Agnes and Hildegard, that could go either way. I could see them being in a series of movies like The Thursday Murder Club, or they could be in a TV series." Great answer from Wendy here, and I love how she calls out the viewers theorizing between episodes. That's such a great call out, and it's interesting because I've heard that discussion before when it comes to TV series, for example. So like these days, when a TV series releases on Netflix or Amazon, sometimes more often than not, really, they'll drop all the episodes at once. And then more recently, there's been, for example, the Fallout series on Amazon where they had a week between each episode. And I can see the argument either way, but in Wendy's answer here, she brings up a good point about how having space between the episodes in the release schedule allows viewers to kind of simmer with the story and come up with fun theories and stuff. So I think that's a really good call out and something to consider, not if, when we get the opportunity to work on adaptations of our series. I'm manifesting it for us. And thank you, Wendy, for that great answer. Next up, Mary Ellen Brady says, "Ooh, intriguing question, and it depends on the story for me. My Warmth/Crispy Zombie series, I read it as if it's an Apple/Netflix TV show. I love the suspense drawn out and the character growth for it as a series. But The Outsider, my Western fantasy, was written here as a series. It is definitely a settle in with popcorn and watch a movie sort of read." Yeah, that's great. And Mary Ellen's answer kind of mirrors my own in the sense that you really have to kind of think about the specific project. And I agree with her. I think the Crispy Zombie series 100% needs to be a TV show to give it that space to breathe. But knowing what I know of The Outsider, phenomenal concept for a movie. So great answer there. Next up, Joe Green says, "It depends. TV format allows stories to be stretched out a bit, whereas a film doesn't. Films can hack complex books down, and it doesn't always work. It depends on how it is written, how long it is, etc. E.g., Les Miserables, I prefer as a TV series that can explore the material better, and any shorter version feels rushed. It's a rich and complex book. Same with Pride and Prejudice, OG BBC version all the way. Some of mine would work as a series if expanded, but others are more concise and would fit better in a film format. Regarding my work, Shore's Parting is becoming a more complex novel, so it could go either way, really. Boundary issues I could have some serious fun with either format. Broken, I'm looking at deving as a film script." Fantastic answer from Joe, and an example of everything here. I love that. I think this answer mirrors some of the things we've talked about in the sense that there's pros and cons to either, and the project itself kind of dictates what might be the best fit. So I agree with everything here. And I really love how this author is already considering multiple formats, including a film script. So fantastic answer there from Joe Green. Thank you so much for that. Next up, J.M. Gooding says, "TV series all the way. I'm not talking about 10-season epics where TV execs beat a dead horse to a bloody pulp. Cough, cough, The Walking Dead cough." But that's true. But more limited series, which is what I guess they call miniseries these days. My longer form work is too character driven to survive a 90 or 120-minute editing cut. They'd most certainly have to cut important moments between the action, which is where the story actually lives. Stillwater in particular feels built for a series, even though I didn't consciously set out to do it that way. Each chapter explores a particular area or the open ocean / a sea day. And most chapters run a full day of travel / exploration / problem, with a couple exceptions. The chapters, yes, 2 of them, I'm dropping this week, covers Miami and a very important event plus the aftermath. I also do it with St. Augustine. My short fiction stories are different. I could see a lot of these working really well with existing anthology series. Some of them, horror like Shimmer or The Hollow, would do well as a Creepshow episode. Some of my more experimental stuff like Sausage Fest or my stories about Daisy would do well as episodes for Love, Death, and Robots. A couple of my speculative fiction pieces might land in Black Mirror.
Now that's really cool. I love J.M. Gooding's answer here because I definitely expected him to mention Stillwater and have that be a TV series because I think that would work amazing. And I also agree with what he said about his short fiction. I'm a big fan of those anthology style series, you know, like the classics, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, so on and so forth. And we've got newer series that obviously fit into different genres like Black Mirror, Love, Death, and Robots, and the examples that J.M. Gooding gave us here. But I think his assessment here is spot on. Every single one of these examples fits perfectly and works really well for that piece. So yeah, I would love, honestly, to see his work adapted into these formats because honestly, I know I sing his praises all the time, and I know we fight about tacos, but this guy is crazy talented, and I really hope he gets the opportunity to bring some of these into that visual format. All right, next up, Terrifying Tales says, for me, it's both. I think my short stories and longer novels like Eden War or The Wolf are better suited to TV series, whereas my 40,000-word novella, Killer Masquerade, is suited to a Scream-style 100-minute screenplay. I come from a childhood theater background, and my eldest daughter is already an accomplished actress in her own right. It's always been a dream to adapt some of my work independently for the screen and have my daughter star in it. Oh my goodness, that is an incredible answer, my friend. Terrifying Tales, aka CJ Knight. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him on the show here. Also, I'll say it every time. Terrifying Tales is the creator of Blackheart, who is the villain of the first book in my Devine series, The Order of the Pawn. So shout out to him for that as well. But yes, I think his assessment here is fantastic in terms of what fits which format, and I really love that his eldest daughter is already, you know, kind of getting into acting and stuff. Can you imagine how cool that would be to have your in this case his daughter star in an adaptation of something he wrote? My mind is blown just thinking about it. That is so cool. Oh, I really want that to happen. We need to make that happen. That is so cool. All right, sorry. Next up, our final response here is from Lady J. McAhern, who says, an animated miniseries or a short-run series. There is literally no need for a TV series that could get pushed for extra seasons. A movie will outright just change the story to a shadow of what it was to fit in a time constraint and within the tastes of a movie audience. With an animation, at least with the right studio and director, animation can do some of the more surreal moments in the book much better than live action, where my character's perception is changed by seeing what is in her mind versus what is going on around her. Plus, you can do a lot more with stylized character design and facial expressions, and casting wouldn't have to worry about trying to find actors to match the appearances of the main characters. Basically, my dream is to have someone like Studio Mir do the animating, or, you know, a non-American studio working on the entire project. I don't follow Western storytelling completely with most of my work, so I would like someone to understand my work. That makes a lot of sense. And again, I really appreciate that some people have brought up animation here, because there really is some strength there that I think a lot of people don't consider. And in this case here, something that I have really noticed in recent years, I'd say in the last like 10 years or so, is that I've been getting into a lot more, you know, kind of Eastern storytelling, if you will, like anime and like, you know, foreign films and stuff. Really enjoying that aspect. Whereas like for, you know, growing up, I watched a lot of like American made stuff. Well, you know, just because that's what was available to me. No real reason beyond that. But I've expanded my horizons in recent years. And I really do love how, you know, different cultures and different parts of the world tell stories differently. And in my opinion, a lot of them are better. So, you know, there is an important distinction there. Like our response here said, where you want to make sure that, you know, you have it in the hands of a studio that matches the type of storytelling that you're doing. It's a really nice call out, and honestly, a fantastic way to close off this week's writing discussion. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted some responses this week. This was one of the best weeks yet. Wow, amazing stuff. But let's move right along, because next we're diving into this week's featured guest interview. All right, so this week I tried something new, as I mentioned in the intro. I had an interview scheduled with Tom Schechter to discuss the second book in his Shieldbreaker Saga series. I last interviewed him on the show nearly 20 episodes ago, so I figured now was the time to have him back and to talk about some of the updates. Well, leading up to our scheduled interview, Tom himself had the idea to do the interview live on Substack. I've been experimenting with some live streams for a while now, and I figured, yeah, let's give it a shot. So fast forward to this past week, and we sat down to do the interview live over this stream for the first time in Saved as Draft history. It was really exciting, and honestly, it went really well. I posted the full recording on my Substack if you want to watch the video, but since Saved as Draft is a podcast, I wanted to make sure that all you amazing audio listeners here have access to it as well via the ability to listen to it in the show. So what follows is the full audio from my live interview earlier this week with Tom Schechter, author of the Shieldbreaker saga. Enjoy. All right. Well, hello, everybody. I see a bunch of people joining already. This is really exciting. So this is my first ever live interview for the Saved as Draft podcast. I'm here, of course, with Tom Schechter, who was my guest on episode 52 of the show back in January of this year. And so I've brought him back, and Tom suggested doing this live format, so we're giving it a shot, and I'm really excited to dive in. We're going to be talking about his, of course, ongoing series, the Shieldbreaker saga. I, of course, have the first book here, but book 2 is out now, and we'll be talking about that as well during the interview. There's like that gorgeous cover. Yep.
Hi, guys. How are you? Good to see those of you I haven't met before. Good to meet you. Great to be here. Thank you, Bradley. What a privilege, man. What a fun way to spend a Tuesday evening.
Absolutely. I love it. I'm so excited to get into this here. So, welcome back to the show. Like I said, second time you've been on the show here. First ever live interview, like I said. As we get into it here, too, for everyone who's already joined and watching, please feel free to share any questions that you have for Tom in the chat. I will work them in during the interview or perhaps save them for the end. We're going to kind of play it by ear, but we want to hear from you. So please drop your messages in the chat, any questions you have as we get into it here. But Tom, let's start off by having you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your creative journey thus far for those who aren't already aware of you.
Okay. I am Tom Schechter. This is the first thing that I've written with any seriousness since like junior year of undergrad. I really enjoy it. And it took about 15 years for me to get it into any kind of shape to show anybody. And so it's just been, it's been a very, very silly process. And also, now coming around on having 2 books out with my name on it, it's been, it's really rewarding now, and started off very silly, and it's okay that it started off silly because we're having a great time now. The Shieldbreaker saga itself is kind of a noir literary fantasy about societal change, about the end of a cycle of civilization, an end of an era, and what do you do when your way of life is being threatened? And so, the most important thing is apparently the jokes work.
Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, too, the Shieldbreaker saga, you yourself are very knowledgeable about, real world history and stuff like that. So the story here, it's a very, I think a good way of describing it would be like a grounded sort of fantasy. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about kind of like where it fits into the fantasy genre?
Well, there's no magic to speak of. So already it is in the piece of the fantasy genre. It is based very, very intentionally on a period of history that I didn't think anybody in the genre was writing about. The collapse of the Eastern Roman and Persian empires in the 7th century and the rise of Islam out of that power vacuum has been like a really, really big inspiration. And there's other eras and other cultures kind of mixed in, and I didn't want it to be any one particular piece of history because I wanted this more along the lines of just, this is a new world. And I think that's really where it is still fantasy, is that this is not a world that we live in. It's not a world that exists, some sort of alternate reality, but it looks and feels and the rules operate very similarly to ours.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'd love to ask a question from the chat actually right now, from Sarah SMR, who asks, what encouraged you to write your book? I know you said it was like 15 years, this process. So what started that?
Yeah. Sarah, that's a really good question, and I really, really wish I had a better answer, and I'm not 100% sure I remember. I absolutely never, from like high school, never got the image of Banquo's ghost grinning at Macbeth over a dinner table. and Macbeth losing his shit. I never got that out of my head and thought to myself, man, it would be really cool if I could do something where the ghost made more of an impact. And I knew that I wanted my main character to have this specter messing with him before I even knew what the main character's name was going to be, and before I really even knew what the rest of the story was going to be. I started out there. I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool? This is as close to here's a cool idea at the end as I'm ever going to get. As wow, wouldn't it be cool if there was this guy who had to help his people survive, and he was absolutely fucking crazy.
Right.
Either actually haunted by the ghost of his dead brother or just hallucinating the living shit out of anything. And you got to ask yourself, either way, is this going to end well? And that was kind of the challenge that I set for myself years and years and years ago. And then I realized I didn't know what to do next for a good long time.
Absolutely. Sarah says, sometimes not knowing the answer is the best answer to get. I love your answer and the thought you put into it. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you,
wanted to share that
Sarah.
feedback.
Thanks so much for asking. I'm really, really glad you chimed in.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So before we dive into the Shieldbreaker saga in more detail, wanted to give you a chance to kind of just tell everybody about your Substack publication. Obviously, Shieldbreaker is a big part of it. But yeah, if you want to give everybody just kind of an overview of what you do here on Substack and why they should subscribe.
Well, yeah. Before I put anything in print, instead of the ARC process that a lot of people go to, I decided 2 years ago, because I didn't know anything about anything, what if I just released a chapter every couple of weeks and saw what people thought of it? So I'm going to keep doing that. I think every time I finish a book, I will announce that it will be coming to Substack first. In between those, I'm probably going to do live reads of each of the chapters, after the release date, just to have a little bit more fun and a little bit more content out there. And in the really not quite on brand, but I think brand doesn't really matter to me here. The other thing that I use this publication for is to spearhead fiction as culture. I am the mouthpiece of a bunch of community-minded fiction writers on here who want to make themselves available to help our fellow authors in times of emergency. And, we were able to run a few initiatives last year that saved people from losing a home, that saved people from running out of food when SNAP benefits went to hell during the shutdown. Like we want to make sure that we as artists are actually in position to not necessarily just ask for donations. What we want is to help our fellow artists in their times of need sell their art, sell their writing, sell other skills that they have if they want to. So it's not just about, this is not charity. We don't have the infrastructure for charity, but we do have the infrastructure to, shout about somebody who's good at something and encourage our larger circle to buy their work. And that seems to have done us a pretty decent turn over the last year and a half, and we're excited to keep going with that. So that is the other piece of the Shieldbreaker saga, is it hosts those initiatives, as well as, it gives, honestly, it's more fun than just me talking about myself all the time. I would get very, very tired of that very quickly. And, I'm here with all of you. I've become a better writer in the last 2 years because I'm here with all of you. At the very least I could do is try to pay some sort of, kindness forward when that's an option. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm really glad that you described it that way, because I feel the same way about the community here and about giving back. And that was something we talked about in your first. Yeah, that was something we talked about in your first interview too, was just how much I respect what you do as part of this community and for the broader community. So, and also have to say, Tamsin G also said she loves that, as you were describing what you do there. So yeah, definitely a lot of support for that. And like I said, I admire it very, very much.
I really appreciate all of it.
Mm-hmm. So for my next question here, earlier this month, if I'm not mistaken, is when you released book 2 of the Shieldbreaker saga.
Yeah, sure. Should I show it again?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm going to show it again. It's blue.
Yeah, there it is, book 2.
Very.
And then I will go ahead and flash up book 1 again here.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see the covers
This
there.
whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so good. So, something I'll plug real quick too for everybody watching is that somewhere near the end of the month here, I'm going to be publishing a full review of the first book in the Shieldbreaker saga on the writer's journey. So keep an eye out for that. But I can say right now, I'm already over halfway through it. I am loving it. It is fantastic. So it's going to be a recommend from me. But
I'll take it.
For my next question here, I was curious, how has the launch of the second book gone thus far? And for everybody watching, where are the different places they can get a copy?
Okay, so again, last year didn't know anything. Loved every part of just having the community jump up. I think it was really incredibly gratifying that the people surrounding me who had read pieces of it or read the whole thing already were very, very quickly into, yes, buy this, sharing it around. And I did, obviously, a lot of that work myself as well. And I had a 1-year-old at the time, which means if I'm doing my math correctly, I now have a 2-year-old. And that means we get a little tiny bit less free time on the hands, fewer free seconds here or there before I have to make sure he's not breaking everything. And so the launch has gone fine. It has been a little bit less all-consuming. Family things pop up and life happens, and that is normal, and all of that is cool. And we've still, managed to move some units, and I'm excited to hopefully move some more when we go up to my first convention in a couple of weeks up in Boston, ReaderCon, which I will be excited to say more about later. But, launch is going good. I'm obviously thrilled with the early response. I was thrilled with the early response when I did the chapter releases at the beginning of the year. I think, again, I'm still learning on all of this, and I wonder if maybe I should go back to releasing chapters at lunch on Wednesday when people are in the office as opposed to trying to do 10 or 11 a.m. Sunday morning, although I really did enjoy the idea of Sean Connery introducing Shieldbreaker Sunday. But it might not have played quite as well for the algorithm. So we'll see. I gotta, go back to the drawing board a little bit on that for next time. But all in all, shit, man, I'm just really genuinely happy to have found these people who are interested enough in reading this stuff and especially the talent level and the skill level of those people. Mm-hmm. If they're saying they like this, I feel like that is, the psychic boost of that is like, damn, okay, cool. I'm on to something here. Mm-hmm. And whatever happens numbers-wise, shit, man, we're all indie authors. We know we're not trying to move gigantic numbers of books without some sort of lightning catching, and that's fine. Process is more important here than outcome. I just want to keep putting myself out there and keep hopefully making sure that my jokes don't alienate too many people or make anybody cringe to death. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah. No, I love that. And one thing I'll say too is that from my experience, I would agree that weekends, especially Sundays, tend to be a bit slower, just in general on Substack. So as much as I love the Sean Connery connection there,
right?
It
was such a good idea.
It was.
Or at least it was a good bit.
Right.
And sometimes I mix up those two in my head. It was a great bit. Not sure we're continuing with it for next year.
It was worth it for the bit. I mean, I'm totally here for the bit. Mm-hmm. Also, I wanted to mention from the chat, Emily S. Hurricane just now said that both your covers are beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. Hurricane is also an incredibly important part of my support here. Besides being a fantastic author in her own right, Hurricane has also been selfless with her time in terms of helping me create the ebooks of these books. The one thing the one piece of the question I probably should actually answer. There are 2 and only 2 places to get Shieldbreaker novels right now.
Mm-hmm.
For paperback, we go to books.by/Shieldbreaker-saga. I will, I'll put it on. We'll put it underneath when we post this to Substack. We'll just put it underneath.
Yep.
And the ebooks are available exclusively at Jay Curtis's new joint, gimmebook.com/Shieldbreaker-saga.
Okay.
Very, very happy to be working with another guy who is community minded, who is, he's put together 2 incredible anthologies of Substack authors for the Midnight Vault. He is obviously one of ours.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a privilege to be able to be an early adopter on this new app. I think it's going to be very, very cool for a lot of us. And, I want to put my money where my mouth is in terms of making sure this is about us. Everybody wins if a few of us win.
Mm-hmm.
And it also allows me to not have to give any of my money to Jeff Bezos. And I will take that. That's another win.
That's a win.
So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, great.
Either Books.by or Gimme Book. Those are the 2.
Okay.
I don't expect that to change anytime soon.
Okay. Excellent. That's awesome. Yeah. And when this recording's posted and when this interview is included in the podcast this week, of course, as well as audio, we will make sure to have links to purchase, of course, the copy of the second book in the show notes and the first book too, if you need to catch up.
Yeah, definitely gotta get them both, man. If you're gonna do it, get them both.
Gotta go all in. Yeah, I agree. So my next question here, I wanted to kind of talk about where things stand within the world of the story at the start of book 2 here. Now, I know that this question may require some spoilers from book 1, so I'll let you use your discretion there. But yeah, I'd love if you could set the stage, like where the world and where the story and the characters are right as we start with book 2. What's going on there?
All right. So where we left everybody was on top of a horrifying blood-stained mountain in the middle of a battle for their survival. Kareva, my protagonist, his first act as the new chieftain of his tribe was to absolutely murder the shit out of an ambassador sent to demand his surrender, wherein we found out that Kareva was in fact being haunted by the specter of his dead older brother who was supposed to be in charge. Kareva, again, not well, not super, not like the most healthy fellow mentally.
Right.
And of course, this is set in an analogous world to 7th century Middle East, and therefore, they haven't invented psychotherapy yet. There's not much to talking out to be done here.
Right.
So he had to get all of his civilians out of their desert fortress and basically have them run across the desert to try to find safety in a very, very large, pretty impenetrable ancient city-state that is independent, while he and the rest of the men went out to basically die to buy them time. Such is life at the end of the world. And, well, shit, it is hard for me to do this without really burying the lead here. But you're only halfway done with the book. I feel terrible for what I'm about to do to you.
I'm going to read it regardless. I'm letting you know right now.
They fight this gigantic horde to a standstill, at which point the warlord of the Northerners, the Poyor, offers him his life again in exchange for serving him, and guarantees the safety of his civilians. The problem with that guarantee is that a few chapters earlier, he had already ordered them all exterminated. And as he and Kareva are negotiating this honorable, not surrender, but new, rather one-sided alliance, a bunch of his guys are in the desert chasing down the Atela civilians that are trying to run away. So that's where we left book 1, and book 2 drops us right back there to the battlefield in the aftermath. The first thing we see is a guy looking for a dead friend among the piles of bodies.
Hmm.
And if book one is about who do you want to be at the end of the world, how do you get yourself a good death, book two is all about the survivors and about the guilt and the grief and the pain of living through that and then having to figure out how to go next, what to do next.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, one thing I was going to say too with the first book that I love, and it sounds like the second book continues this, is that there's just an amazing sense of world building in place right off the bat, but there's also that tension and that looming kind of danger that's always hanging over the characters' heads as we're building up, and the way you set the stage for that and then keep that tension going and kind of ramp it up as time goes on. I mean, I love that. It's really, really cool stuff. It's one of my favorite elements of the book. I have a lot of favorite elements, so that's one of them. But I wanted to take another question from the chat here. Hallie the Moonlight Bard asks, Tom, who or what in your life inspired Kivli?
Yes, Kivli. Hallie and Kivli. Hallie loves her Kivli. Kivli is not in the first book except as a famous dead activist from a prequel, The Daughters of Ve, which is still available for free exclusively on Substack and will be until I print it. That's generally the way it is. Kivli, how did I come up with Kivli, man? Kivli started out as simply just a 1 or 2 sentence throwaway because there had to be some crazy person who started the massive catastrophic rebellion that lives in the shadow underneath, that ended in Kareva's older brother getting got, that left him in charge, and that has put all of his people even more at risk than they already were. And once I got there, I didn't really feel like I wanted to leave it there. And I wanted to give her maybe not necessarily credit or not necessarily grace, but like I wanted to give her brain at least a chance to show its side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I borrowed liberally from the first episode of Vikings. Kivli's introduction in Daughters of Ve. She has suffered a massive head wound on a battlefield, and she sees messengers of their goddess Ve, the goddess of blood, taking warriors home, basically a Valkyries type thing. And I definitely, absolutely was inspired by, but liberally borrowed from the very, very first time we meet Ragnar Lothbrok in Vikings, where he's on a battlefield and he sees Odin's raven, and then he sees the Valkyries taking the dead warriors on both sides back up to Valhalla. Absolutely, that's in there. And that's like, Kivli is the most, obviously Viking berserker type character I've ever come up with. And I needed to give her more than that. And it was really, really fun writing that novella kind of on a whim. Swear to God, that was a Wattpad contest gone horribly wrong for Wattpad, and, turned out pretty good for me. The fact that they did not like it very much. But it worked out pretty good for the people that were already reading me on here. And so I've got a couple other novellas that I want to put together to give the world a little bit more nuance, at least the before times world, a little bit more nuance before I get too far into the story that I'm actually telling of Kareva, and want Kareva to be of his time, and therefore I need to explain what that means.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. So speaking of like the world building and stuff, next up, I wanted to talk a bit about how the world came together. So, like, for example, at the beginning of our conversation, you talked about how like this is a fantasy that doesn't utilize magic. For example, it's like a hard and fast rule. So, I'm curious, like, what is your world building process when you kind of started writing this? Did you start by building the world, and if so, like, how did you come to that conclusion where you wanted these kind of specific, characteristics within this world?
Well, this is my favorite part because this is about how little I knew when I started the process. Because the very, very first thing that I did was, okay, there's warriors coming down from the north. And I think there's something going on in the east and in the west. I don't know why they're here. I don't know what they're doing here. I don't know why they were enemies. I don't know why this city exists. I don't know what any of it was. Actually, like, this was the thing. It actually was probably more of a fantasy saga, or had the idea to be more of a fantasy saga, even without necessarily using magic at first, because I didn't have any actual, like, didn't have anything logical making sense to ground it. The reason that it took me so long to get book one in order was because the world building was so nothing. And not even that it was nothing, it was just that it was like nobody had any motivation to do anything. Nobody had any motivation. Yeah,
Right.
Hallie knows. Nobody had any motivation to actually be there. Didn't have any clue why anybody was doing any of the things they were doing. It was just a bunch of dudes running around getting revenge on each other for stuff. And nobody could tell me, and I couldn't tell anybody where the stuff had begun. And so that's why I threw the thing away as utter complete garbage and put it in a drawer for 10 years.
Okay.
What happened is, during the pandemic, I had a bunch of extra time on my hands and got to read a lot of history, which is where the actual, the reason why it doesn't feel like the world has to be built, or it doesn't have to be like explained. So it is mostly, it's based enough on our world that we don't really have to, like, I don't have to give you the every single bloodline of every single emperor, every single, like, no, let's not bother with that. We know what's happening here. And the way I was able to get that was by reading a bunch of history, by reading about what happened at the end of the Roman Empire and slightly after it, the Justinian reconquest, and then the long, very stupid, very long Persian-Roman wars at the end of the 6th century, beginning of the 7th century, that left both of those empires in such ruin that they both promptly collapsed when it was over. And at that exact moment is when Muhammad and company came out of Mecca and Medina. It was very, very easy for them to take that region, and it wouldn't have been, except for that the two empires that had been in charge of the thing for the last God knows how many hundreds of years had just fought each other, not to a standstill, but to literal mutual destruction. There's nothing left. And that was the thing that hit me, was, oh, fuck, it's got to be a power vacuum.
Right.
You don't have a Western Empire and an Eastern Empire. What you have is shambles that used to be a Western Empire and an Eastern Empire. And then you can start actually seeing where this goes. And from there, it became actually kind of, oh, hello, sorry. That's the one thing about doing it live, is sometimes people knock their phones over. Then it became really easy to build the thing and build the tension, is because literally everything that any of these characters do could spell doom for them and their people very, very easily. If you don't hold the right flank in this battle, it's not just your guys and your buddies who are going to get killed. That's it. We done. So, yeah, I mean, I had to build stakes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Absolutely. So, during your last answer, you mentioned, for example, that, readers don't necessarily need to know the entire family line of a certain character or, family lineage. But my question here is, despite not describing that in the story, you have a lot of complexity here. You have a lot of characters, a lot of, like you said, power dynamics, motivations, and, stuff like that, and kind of tension and everything. So when you were doing the world building here, I was wondering, like, do you yourself, like, outside of anything everybody else can see, do you yourself have, like, documents, for example, where you have, like, this, full history of the world, or does it kind of live in your head? I'm curious.
Mostly in my head.
Okay.
Which is good, because I'm gonna keep having to make up a bunch of shit as I go along. I know what the end point is for the series a dozen books from now. And therefore, I kind of have an ability to work, a little bit of reverse engineering to make sure that the things that happen have to happen at a certain point. And because of the way I've decided to write it, where it's all kind of subjective, every single person has their POV, and I'm not doing any sort of, and then this happened. It's just like everybody gets to react to events as they see it, which allows them to have their motivations and actually act on their motivations and use those motivations to drive the story forward instead of just leaving it as, and then this has to happen. And then, I think that would have been the trickiest part about adding magic to this, honestly, is I really didn't want to have this be another, and then this happened, and then everyone was saved. Like, we got more work to do than that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I obviously have plenty of work to do on all of these things the entire time. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it entire documents. There are definitely notes, that there are definitely some guiding like principles, and most of it is how do the different religions work, not who did what and who did what and who did what. I do not have, the history of all the kings in any way, shape, or form. I mostly have how does the system work? And if the system works, then it doesn't really matter who the dudes are as much in that particular situation. And it means that I can kind of play around with how people would react to a larger system of how would the Atala have worked in their prime?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it took me until I was 90% of the way through writing book one before it actually hit me. Oh, they were mercenaries the whole time. Okay, yeah, duh, of course they were. I should have known that the whole time. And that's fine. I'm okay with flying by the seat of my pants on the backstory, as long as once I know that it's the backstory, I'm going to stay faithful to the things that I figure out. I will keep figuring them out as we go along, and it will play out the way it plays out.
Absolutely. So yeah, you kind of answered my next question already, but I was kind of curious. So your actual writing process, you mentioned you have like a dozen books planned at one point just now, which is awesome. And you obviously said the end point as well. But when you're actually writing the books, are you more of like the traditional sort of plotter where you have like an outline you work with, or is it more just like a pantser, like as they say, where you're kind of like you know where it's going, you're sort of letting it lead you?
I guess I'm plotter. I think if I have to, I'll admit it. I think the outline that I will build before I actually write even a word of final draft is going to be scene by scene, person's reaction to thing by reaction. It's not, and again, I think that the major difference is I don't want to call it just a plotter, because my priority is not about and then this happens. It's here is how this person's feeling about blah, blah, blah is going to lead him to do this. And then from there, I think it's more important to me to be able to understand how the people are going to work. It's more about the characters. I think it's more a character study even than it is an epic. And it's going to be, it's going to be that long. It's going to end up being an epic, and there are going to be some big ass battles. And there are going to be some more plot twists and some more political intrigue. And even just in book two, I'm very, very excited for you to get through book two and freak out a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it's more about the people than it is about. It's more about the people and how they're reacting to what's happening around them, including to Koreva's very, very questionable sanity, than it is about any particular one major story.
Okay. Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Especially like you said, with the scope of the series, how long it's meant to go on for. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because as a writer, as I'm reading the book, I'm thinking, how does he keep track of all of these just like the sheer scope of it, the complexities, like I said.
Don't worry too much. That's just because I read The Idiot when I was in 7th grade. Okay. I guess I'm going to be this guy now. Sometimes you're just that guy. It's one too many or 20 too many Russian novels, and just being used to it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it works. Trust me, it works. I mean, I'm fully engrossed. It's impressive, like how many moving pieces also, you have.
Yeah. It's also tricky.
Yeah. And speaking of the complexity too, my next question here, I wanted to ask, because something that's really unique about the first book here, and I imagine it's the same with the second book, is that you tend to switch POVs within chapters. Like, for example, other books that I've read, every chapter will be like a single POV and it'll switch between chapters. But you yourself, you'll have that transition happen just over the course of a chapter. It'll happen, once or multiple times. So I'm curious, like, what inspired that structure specifically?
Honestly, television.
Okay.
I think there's a bunch of things to be learned from, obviously, yeah, literature. I'm not the first person to do this in literature. I think one of my favorite scenes of any book ever, in The Godfather by Mario Puzo, the original, and this doesn't really translate to the film. And it's part of the reason why I still, after all these years, and the movies were fucking brilliant, but I still prefer the novel just ever so slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, and this is the example that I used. I think I used this example at some point when I was talking about why I made the stylistic choices that I made, and also why, like, the mechanism of how I'm changing points of view. The moment in The Godfather where Sonny comes to beat the shit out of Carlo Rizzi for beating up his little sister, Carlo's wife. In the book, that's told from the perspective of one of Carlo's employees, who is already exasperated by what a dumb, stupid piece of shit Carlo is as a boss, and basically bored of having to manage him upward every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sees Sonny's car coming, and you get to see this whole thing happen from his perspective of, oh shit. And then you switch to Carlo, ducking and covering because he knows that's the only way he gets out of it. And in the movie, it's just, okay, you're sitting there, you see the stoop, you hear the car screech out, and, you see Sonny get out, and you see the beatdown. And it's just, it's not badly done in any way, shape, or form, but, like, I really, really liked that tertiary character saying, what the fuck is this about? Sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself when I was, the first time I wrote my first draft of the first chapter, and it's just Careva getting mad and then stabbing the guy a whole bunch of times.
Right.
Felt thin. It just felt like it would be more fun to see Alakutz and see his wheels turning while Careva is below him, stabbing this guy somewhere between 12 and 3,000 times. It would be more interesting to see just it. And it felt to me, and this is where my favorite show of all time, Deadwood, comes in, because you can see the cuts from one face to the next face to the next face, and all I'm like, oh no, what's about to happen? Oh shit. Those oh shit cuts are really
right.
You want to know a little bit more about what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
At least if you're me, and this is 50, 60 watches in at this point. You kind of want. I want that extra second and a half with each character to kind of sense what the oh shit is conveying. What they're thinking about. Are they thinking about the consequences of what's going to happen? Are they thinking about what this means for them personally? Are they thinking about what this means in a larger sense for the camp personally? And you don't know, because all you get is they're, snap, second and a half here or there. And it's not bad. Again, it's effective, but like, that is, I want this to be about people. I don't want this to just be the Careva show.
Right.
I think that's really what it is. The motivation is just because we got a lot of very, very good, very well done, epic stories about the main character doing the stuff.
Yeah.
And I wanted more people around watching him do the stuff and reacting to and thinking about and strategizing based off of and emoting based off of him doing the thing.
Yeah.
I thought that would be more.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. I really love kind of the examples you provided there. And one thing I'll say too is that a byproduct of this structure, in addition to everything you described just now, for me as the reader, that I've noticed is that it makes for exceptional pacing. Like, things move really quick, and when you're getting those nice like POV switches, it just kind of adds another sort of momentum to the pacing of the chapter. And another thing that I would say too is that, the chapters feel very rich as a result. Like, you're getting a lot of different information in a good way. It's not too much or anything, but
That's what I'm hoping for, because
yeah.
I see all of these chapters as kind of an episode of Talbot.
Okay.
Tamsin just wrote an awesome question that I do want to get.
I was going to ask that next. Yeah.
Yeah, please go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll read it out here. So yeah, Tamsin G asked, has Substack changed the way you write? Which I think is a fantastic question. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think by osmosis more than anything else. I had really only read what I had read when I got up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very happy with that first 10 chapters, and I, wouldn't have changed anything about it. But I think reading back through book one and then reading book two again, I can sort of sense where I have, I've expanded, I think, the tool belt a little bit.
Yeah.
The main mechanism of those shifting points of view isn't going anywhere. And the story is still the story I wanted to tell, but it definitely has let me, the ability level on here has challenged me to stretch.
Mm-hmm.
There's a long ass dream sequence that never in a million years would I have come up with outside of hanging out with you all.
Right.
The final scene absolutely needed to be the final scene of book two. Is the hardest I've ever had to work to make a thing hit the way it's supposed to hit. And it's the only thing I've ever worked with an editor on, and it was it was Emil Ottoman. Of course, it was. Crazy bastard that he is. He took the thing from being 85% of the way there to being a really, really serious fucking gut punch. It would not have hit the same, and it was, again, it's a scene that needed to be, it's a scene that needed to be perfect. It is a scene that is the fulcrum for probably the rest of the series.
Right.
It's the scene that, it's like trying to shoot at a moving target from 100 miles away, and the target is the size of a fucking thimble. I needed it to be inch perfect, and I didn't quite have the technique.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at what it looked like a year ago when I had first written it, thought, oh yeah, that's really cool, to what it looks like now. That first one is cute, and this one now does the job.
Wow.
So yeah, Substack is, the fiction community on Substack, the literary fiction community, the fantasy community, absolutely directly responsible. I have become a better writer because of hanging out with you knuckleheads for 2 years. And again, thank you all enough for that.
Yeah. I have to. I mean, I've only been here about a year and a half myself, but I wholeheartedly agree. I can also see the growth of my writing just from reading other people's work, feedback, comments.
I'm not taking classes on this. I am reading. I'm reading and being pushed.
Yeah. It's
amazing.
It's so cool.
It's really gratifying.
Yeah. There's nothing else quite like it. It's such an amazing experience being on here in this community here. It's just amazing. So yeah, excellent question from Tamsin. Thank you again. That was a wonderful question. And a quick reminder too, for anybody who's joined just in the last, few minutes here, please, feel free to drop questions in the chat. We'll work them into the conversation where it makes sense.
Absolutely, we will.
Yeah, but we want to take advantage of the fact that it's alive. So please, if you have any thoughts as we're discussing here, we definitely want to work in your questions. But I'll jump to my next question here. So another element about the book that I really, really love is how you approach action and battle scenes. I just love the way that they're written, and it's funny because literally earlier I was working on the next chapter of one of my series on Substack here, my fantasy series. And I literally was writing a battle scene and I stopped and I was like, you know what? I'm going to read some more Shieldbreaker because I was like, I feel like battle scenes are one of those things that I could definitely stand to be better at. And yours are just amazing. And that's a bona fide fact. I mean, it's a really, really well-written aspect of the book. So my question for you here is, the scenes themselves, they have really nice choreography, good description. They're paced well. They have a really good rhythm. And if I'm not mistaken, you have a background in music as well. So I'm curious, is there a connection there when you approach battle scenes, like where you consider something like the rhythm, or what's your process there? Because again, they're so good.
I think music probably is an undercurrent for everything that I write. There is rhythm to it. I think when you hear me read it out loud, you can kind of, I've had that note before, is hearing me read it out loud, you kind of get the cadence a little bit more, the way aims work. For the battle scenes specifically, that is just a byproduct of me being an absolute goddamn lunatic about military history.
Right.
Between, even without a specific amount of, without the technology we're working on here, I think, there's always been some sense, I played a lot of Medieval 2 Total War on the PC when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And a younger adult and a slightly more weathered adult.
Right.
And that definitely helped. Honestly, like between simulations and between reading, even just World War II histories where they got into the strategy of, okay, like thinking about it from a larger scale perspective where you have to take this town to cut off roads to do this. Like, okay, fine. I can put that on a smaller scale easily enough. And I suppose now in a scenario where I've got to like have a larger army chasing a smaller army around a lot, which is going to happen reasonably soon in the series. I think the most important trick is to make it personal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the shift of POV helps me so much, is that if you can make it personal, where you can take it from the front to like seeing something happen from slightly above, or having the warlord down below, looking up at the battlefield, looking up at this mountain that his men are trying to take and having a very, very hard time with. I think being able to just have some sense of how a shield wall versus shield wall confrontation would work, and then just trying to draw it out enough. I don't feel like I'm answering this question quite as well as you'd want. I don't think the rhythm of the battle scenes comes from music. I think it's just about making sure I knew there were several beats I needed to hit.
Okay.
It is like remember I said before, where these things are outlined to within, an emotional reaction. Like every single piece of this goes in before I write it. So it's really about planning it out ahead of time and then just making sure the clock makes sense.
Okay. Right. Right.
And another, and I will say it may be cheating. There's no map here for a reason. I do not need anybody counting steps and trying to do the math on exactly how fast a guy would have to run 100 feet in order to make this particular strategic thing work. Okay. Someone can do that someone can do that later.
Mm-hmm.
Someone can do that. If this ever actually hits and somebody on Reddit wants to like spend 8 years of their life picking apart the cadence of whether this battle would make chronological sense, and they want to yell at me about it, I will be the happiest man in the world. But that's really, I guess that's it. It's just plan,
okay.
Research to within an inch of your fucking life.
Right.
And, and don't try anything crazy unless you have some analogy where it worked in real life.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. I think that's a really good answer, because I think for me, and I'm curious if anybody in the chat agrees with this, but when it comes to writing like battle scenes, I struggle with, obviously they're supposed to feel grand, especially if it's a big battle, but it's like, what do I need to focus on? You brought up a really good point about like that, like I think you said like the clock, or like, that like the timing of everything makes sense. Obviously planning it out, I think, is really good advice too. It's just, I feel like my brain will kind of misfire trying to like parse, all the chaos. It's like, well, what does the reader need to know? And when and how should I describe that? And just the way that you approach it, I feel like is very polished. And
the best battle I've ever read is
Yeah.
the big one at the end of the Witcher saga.
Okay. All right.
I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, which goes,
Yeah.
I have a toddler and my brain is elsewhere all the time, but
Right.
that's the one. It's at the end of The Lady of the Lake. It is 14 chapters long, and it is peppered with things like, and Tamsin's asking about how do you get the key to an emotional reaction. It's because we're all people. So to that point, the most important piece of this whole battle chapter, series of chapters, this massive chunk of the book, is from the medical tent behind the scenes, and these 3 or 4 people watching a steady stream turn into a flood, turn into a fucking tsunami of dead, dying, wounded soldiers screaming in agony, most of them.
Yeah.
And how do you live, whether you're in the front and barely surviving it or not surviving it, or whether you're back there at the end, trying to piece people together. It is hell. I think the thing that, battle scenes are supposed to feel grand, but I don't think we ever want to, at least for me, I don't ever want them to feel triumphant or heroic. I want it to hurt.
Yeah.
I want to feel like a fucking nightmare. Because I feel like that makes it honest, and I feel like we get our real selves when we're the most scared we're ever going to be in our entire life.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there, and I think that answers Tamsin's question perfectly, because it is, like you said, it's thinking about the people who are in this battle, who are going through this. None of them are thinking about how they're going to be heroes. They're thinking about, how do I get through this in one piece?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I really like how you called that out.
How do we die well and gloriously? And
Right. Yeah.
Billions, but the idea is the same. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a fantastic answer. So yeah, my next question here. Now that you have book 2 out, I'm curious, what's next for the Shieldbreaker saga? Are you already, into drafting book 3, or are you going to maybe switch to the Daughters of A? I remember you mentioned is not in print yet. I'm curious, what's your next step now that book 2 is out?
I am trying to figure that out. I've got very decently detailed. I've got a decently detailed outline of book 3 that I need to add to. Not quite full enough yet, and I still feel like there's stuff. It feels thin, and so I want to make sure that I have enough going on that it actually gets to the rest of the story. I also do want, there's a couple of spin-off prequels that I want to write. One I've been promising to get to for now about 1.5 years. I want to write Uskul and Uskul. And the basic concept that I've got for that is, imagine if Superbad was taking place at a Viking festival instead of a house party.
Okay. I am intrigued. That sounds really good.
It's going to be messy, and there's other political shit going on under, behind the scenes of it. But that's the basic concept: is those boys are going to keep getting into trouble and keep doing dumb shit, and maybe they just bring down the Atella accidentally as a result. But who's to say? There's another, obviously, I want to just delve into some of the backstories of some of the surviving captains a little bit better, because we know if you have read Daughters of Ve, you know a little bit more about some of the supporting cast and what they have been through over the course of the last 6 years before the main action starts. And they have other little things going on, little, small scale feuds within the tribe that I kind of want to explore a little deeper, just because I feel like that would be a fun way to just explore how they interact with the world. Allows me to show more of the world without it being like, and then this emperor did this thing and passed this law. I'm not going to write House. I'm not going to ever write anything even remotely close to Fire and Blood. or a Silmarillion about. Then it's just that's not my jam.
Sure.
Not what I want.
Yeah.
But I would love to have the opportunity to explore some of these other smaller role characters that I care about very much, and I want, when they have to do what they're about to have to do in certain cases over the course of the next couple of books, I want that to be fleshed out enough that their motivations are believable, that it's, on a large scale, it's easy to do. Everything's collapsing, everything's going to hell, survive.
Mhm.
Fight, survive, strategize, figure out a way to make it through. But now on a smaller scale, within, like you said, there's these small there's the balance of power stuff. There's the behind the scenes struggles that need a little bit more exploring. And it's not enough to just be like, it's just business. It's not personal. No, some of this shit is personal. It should be personal. So like, just,
Yeah.
I want to give Mikal and Geortz a little bit more time. I want to give Aravan Limava, my resident, his nickname literally translates to pretty boy because he is the biggest hoe bag in the entire Hodrir millet. And I want to have a little bit of fun with that.
Right. Yeah.
There's like little things like that I was able to just hint at here or there over the course of those 2 books. I'm never going to write these. I don't want these to be 800 pages apiece. I want it to be tight. I want it to, I want us to get down to business, but there's no reason I can't just have these little spinoffs are really fun to write. And if I can find the time to do them. Exactly, Hurricane. If you party like that. Yeah, Limava parties like
that. Sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. So yeah, all right. Well then, yeah, like as you've said, as we've discussed the series, the world, there's a lot more stories to tell here. There's a lot more books on the series. There's a lot of prequel side stories, stuff like that. As someone like myself who, I kind of do this to a fault, but I have a few different, connected universes and series, and I have a novel I'm working on. I'm curious, like for you specifically, like looking into the long term, do you see yourself kind of just being headquartered in this world, the Shieldbreaker saga, with all the work that you do, or do you have other ideas that you're thinking about mixing in at some point? I'm just curious about that.
My goal is to write this one really, really good story, and never do this ever.
Right. Okay.
The brilliant and talented and infuriatingly young JLG Noga
yes,
is on tap to produce at some point a prequel spinoff based on the life of one of the holy men that barely gets mentioned in book 2.
Okay.
Basically going to write within the Shieldbreaker universe an epic biography that will turn into like a religious text about one of the Eastern Empire's greatest heroes, who turns into a messenger of peace. And my goal is for it to eventually come out that book and the reality of it don't really connect entirely perfectly, as you'd imagine. And that'll be a fun way, because there's nothing more fun for me in the world than to poke at and pick apart and just generally light on fire the very concept of organized religion. It's one of my favorite straw men, frankly. So that's one I'm looking forward to light on fire after Noga gets the holy book done. But yeah, I don't intend to be out of this. This is the one idea I've ever had that feels different enough from anything else that I had read, that I wanted to do something new and interesting. And I wanted to, as long as it stays new and interesting to me, and as long as it stays new and interesting to the people who are reading it, I'm happy. And I don't feel like I would need, if I got this across the finish line in a way that I was satisfied with, I would not feel the need to think to myself, okay, what am I going to do for an encore? I did mention how many books I'm planning for this.
You did, yes.
So I'm good after that.
Right.
This will be more than enough. None of you will ever want to hear from me ever again. I'm done with book number 27 or whatever bullshit I wound up pulling together.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, I love that. I really love that. Yeah, the Shieldbreaker is like your magnum opus.
This is my thing. This is the thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Good as well as I possibly can. and then I will be very, very happy with, you know, with that as, you know, if anyone winds up paying enough attention to this on a larger scale, again, don't care if it is, but I want, if this is a thing that I was to be even remotely known for, I'll be very happy with that.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
I don't think I would need to go beyond that and try to come up with, what am I going to do? I mean, they're doing all the dragons are already having sex. The werewolves and the fae and the vampires and all not writing those.
Right.
And every detective story has ever been written already, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do any autofiction. For damn sure. I think this is the thing I'm doing. And it hits enough of the things that I am interested in that I wouldn't feel the need to, I wouldn't want to force it.
Yeah.
If by accident something else struck my interest, and I was like, okay, I can write this. That's one thing, but I'm not going to force it.
Yeah.
I want this. I want this to be good, and I want this to be, I want this to be complete.
Yeah.
And beyond that,
yeah. That focus and that drive that you have for this world and for this series, I mean, it's so inspiring. Like I said, I'm someone who really get stuck on tangents, going off and writing standalone short stories and starting all of these projects, whatever. I love that you have this drive for Shieldbreaker and for this world. I mean, it's awesome. It's really, really cool to see. I admire that.
It's really, honestly, I never in a million years thought I'd be even here.
Yeah.
And I never in a million years thought it would be any good in that first attempt. I put it in a drawer for a decade for a reason. And the fact that it is back means it's, means I gotta pay attention to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let me go ahead and work in another question from the chat here. Tamsin is back with another amazing question. Seriously, one of the VIPs watching the stream here.
For sure. Yeah.
So Tamsin, of course, is known for her cozy fantasy. So her question here makes a lot of sense. She asks, would you ever do a cozy prequel or sequel in this world?
Well, that depends on how you define the parameters.
Sure.
I did manage, I think the closest thing to a cozy short story that I've written for this, when Garen Marie Glacier did her Small and Scary, Big and Beastly event last summer, I threw down a short story for that called Between Us. And I suppose it might fit the parameters because the entirety of the action does take place within one night of a guy on guard at the Chieftain's Hall. I'm not going to say anything more than that because I don't want to ruin it. But I wonder, Tamsin, if that would qualify. And if not, then I guess the answer is we'll see.
Right.
Does that count? And if it counts, yes. And if not, then I guess I would have to know the rules before I answer the question.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Tamsin says that sounds so fun. So
yeah. You should definitely look that one up. I'm actually rather proud of that one. That one came out of one, sat down for one writing session and kind of just ran it in one draft, and it turned out very, very nicely. So, and Garen's one of my all-time favorites on here, so it's really great to be able to participate in one of her events. So,
okay,
good time.
Right. And what was the title of that one again? One more time?
That's called Between Us.
Between Us. Okay, cool. I need to check that one out too. I'm curious. I like the premise a lot. It's interesting. All right, cool. Awesome. Yeah, that actually brings up another question too that I wanted to ask, because you obviously mentioned this other book, from a different author that will be set. And it sounds like it's canon to the universe, like it'll be an official part of the universe. So I'm curious, because this is something I do with one of my connected universes. Do you plan, long term, do you plan to have any other authors, or do you think about that idea as something you may want to do, where other authors can write sanctioned stories in this universe? Is that something you're interested in?
I want to see how this first one goes. I love Noga. I adore his work. He's brilliant. And if somebody of that level wants to participate in this thing, it will be hard for me to say no to.
Yeah.
But again, I want to keep an open mind about it.
Yeah. Okay.
but let me see how this first one goes. I'm not trying to open it up to, I don't want to open it up to anybody. It would be nice to work with more friends.
Yeah.
I am running a little bit tight on time here.
Okay.
How many more you got?
Let's see. I have 3 more questions total, but I can get it down to 2, no problem.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I'll jump to the second to last one here. So I mean, you kind of covered this already, so it might be a short answer, but I wanted to ask, 2 books into this series here, and obviously, 2 years on Substack, like you said, what are some of the ways that you have kind of improved or grown as an author while working on this project? And maybe, again, from the influence of other writers on Substack, like how have you yourself improved?
I think it was mostly just seeing more examples of, honestly, just rule breaking.
Okay.
Really good stream of consciousness, which I've always loved and have always been a little bit shy about. But again, that takes a little bit of there's a little bit of that in book 2 because I was pushed to do it and it felt good when I saw what came out of it. I've always felt good about my dialogue. Just I don't know. I think the things that are stretching me are just more technical things. I think I know how to edit myself a little better now than I did the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's because of Substack or whether that's because now I'm on 2 books and 2.5 really books in, as opposed to 2 plus a novella, as opposed to brand new. Whether that's because of just the experience, or whether it's specifically the experience of being here, open question. But all I know is I feel like I know more about what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's making me set my sights higher.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. So for my last question here before we wrap up, I wanted to give you an opportunity to jump back over to what we discussed at the beginning of the interview with the Fiction is Culture and ReaderCon 2026. Yeah.
Boston, July 9th to 12th. Fiction is Culture would like to give an open call. Anybody who wants, any of our novelists here who want to offer us free promotional material to put on the Substack tables that we have put together with the help of the incomparable, and frankly spearheaded by the incomparable Insani Darpecchio, aka Zanny Darp. My sister from another mister and from another mother. Great people. Brilliant writer in her own right. And knows the convention circuit better than I did or any of our other friends seem to have. So we're going to Boston. I will be there. A few of our other buddies will be there. Anybody who's around that weekend, come hang out. Come say hi. It's about the readers of speculative and interesting fiction. It feels like it's going to be a weekend that we all will want to be here, and I'm very excited to see a few of my friends from this platform in person.
Yeah.
A couple I've already met before, a couple I'm very, very excited to see in person for the first time. It's going to be really cool. And again, anybody who wants to promote something, obviously our esteemed colleagues Dylan Bosworth and Jay Curtis have signed up their publishing houses as sponsors for specific artists that they like and that they want to sponsor, as well as obviously their roster. But beyond that, we have room for a lot of people.
Okay.
We have room for a lot of things. If you've got a bookmark, if you've got even a business card with a QR code, if you've got something cool that you want to share with the world and you think it will help you get more exposure, reach out and let's figure out if we can help you get into it.
Okay. No, that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I'll include a link. I know a post came out recently about all this. So I'll include a link to that with this recording, with of course the podcast this weekend when that comes out. But yeah, so how should people get in touch if they are interested? Should they just DM you, or is there
there is a Google form right there
on the post? There's a Google form. Got it. Okay. Well, Tom, thank you so much again for coming on here.
Thank you all. Thank you, Tamsin.
Yeah, Tamsin,
MVP.
definitely VIP.
Tamsin ran the show. you, Hallie. Thank you, Hurricane. Thank you.
So many good questions.
Thank you
yeah.
for those of you who I've never met. Thank you, Sarah. That was a good question, too. Thank you all. You guys are awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah, this was fantastic. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah,
Best
thank you,
of
Brad.
luck. Yeah, well, of course. I love doing this.
I'm going to show this one more time.
Yep.
The
Book 2.
links will be up there. Buy copies. I will love you forever. And if I do sell 150 copies of this, I will go on a live and play the most ridiculous song I've ever written in my entire life. It is
Well, there you go.
Flintstones' Fiddler on the Roof mashup.
Wow. Okay.
130 copies to go at last count.
130 copies. All right, we can do that.
Somebody make music really silly, please.
Yeah. Okay, we have a goal. I love it.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks so much.
All right, and a big thank you to Tom again for being my first ever live interview for the podcast here. And I'd love to know, what did you think of the format? Were you on the live stream? Would you like to see more interviews like that, where there's an option for audio or video? Let me know in the comments of the episode here, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, let's dive into next week on Substack. So, I'm writing the final part of the podcast script here before I record, and prior to this morning, I had some big plans for next week, but now I'm going to have to pivot. So let me explain. As you all know, I've been dealing with one thing after another in my personal life in recent years. Trouble at work, trouble with my house, needing sudden and insanely expensive repairs, and before that, trouble with a lawsuit that I didn't ask for. So, welcome to the storm that never ends, I suppose. This morning, I discovered that my fridge is finally giving out. It's way over temp, which means the food's going to start going bad. And I knew it was starting to go because I had it repaired a few years ago when it had a smaller issue, and the repairman basically said, listen, you got a few years left on this thing, and when it goes, it goes. So I was really hoping that I'd have more time, seeing as how I've, had to go into debt for all the crap that's happened in the last month. But it turns out I don't. And so, yeah, that explains why the food's going bad. Anyway, I'm going to be looking at new refrigerators tomorrow. Yay, as if I needed more debt. Anyway, this is not the Bradley Rants podcast. It's the Saved Us Draft podcast. In any case, I need to handle that. And I was going to work tomorrow, but now I got to do this instead. So this coming week, I've also got contractors coming back to the house to finish repairs on the basement, where that sewage backup happened last month, leading to all those repairs. So suffice to say, I don't anticipate that I'm going to be as productive as I would like this coming week. So I'm going to give you all a look at what I'm working on, but I can't commit to any dates yet with everything going on. I apologize. I hope you understand. That being said, just real quick, if you enjoy what I do here on Substack, you enjoy the challenges, the prompts, you love the show here, I would humbly ask that you check out the link to my Ko-Fi, where you can leave a one-time donation, or if you'd like to become a paid subscriber on Substack, I do have some benefits rolling out soon for those folks as well, including that mini podcast, Dream Drafts, that's coming out. But yeah, find more info in the show notes. And if you get a chance to share it, that is amazing as well. I really appreciate it. I really wish that we lived in a world where money wasn't always an issue for everybody, but it is what it is. And I love doing this, and I'm going to keep doing it regardless. But my goal, of course, is to make this a full-time job somehow, some way. I just, that's the goal, and I feel like I'm not the only one. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you for listening. Stressful money talk aside, let's talk about what I'm working on. And the better question is, what am I not working on? Seriously though, I have made some progress working on the return of the Devine series, which I know many of you are waiting for. The Order of the Pawn will be out soon. I'll have an announcement soon for that. And this will kick off the second half of the first story arc, or the first book, if you will. It's going to get wild, and the consequences of this fight across time and space with the Rot will end up, by the end of this book, permanently changing Devine going forward. That's the stakes we're dealing with. Really excited to get back into that. Outside of that, I'm working on editing the next episode of the Many Worlds of Clenchport podcast, which is, of course, a narrative series set in the same universe as the upcoming animated series, The Chronicles of Clenchport. The first 2 episodes of that podcast are out right now, if you'd like to catch up, and that show runs on 2-part story arcs. So this 3rd episode will kick off a brand new story, making it the perfect time to jump in. I've got some news happening soon for the animated series as well, but I need to wait a bit longer to say anything there. We are making moves, though, so stay tuned.
Also coming soon is the new mini podcast that I mentioned with early access for paid subscribers. Dream Drafts has gotten some incredible feedback from a few alpha listeners that I sent it to, and I'm excited to share it with my fellow writers who enjoy mindfulness and meditation. All that aside, you can also expect a new power-up prompt tomorrow, June 28th, and you'll have until the following Friday at midnight Eastern to submit. People vote in a poll each week on the genre, as I mentioned, and last I checked, we were leaning towards romance, which is cool. I've been unable to touch my novel these last few weeks, but I did want to address that here as well. I'm trying to find time to work it back into the schedule, and I'm just trying to figure out how to do it, because it's been almost 10 years I've been working on this thing, and I'm determined to get it done. So I'm hoping that this constant storm of stress will finally subside sooner rather than later. In the meantime, though, once more, I just want to say thank you. Your support means everything. This community is everything. Being here with you all, reading your work, making this show, it's one of the things that's keeping me going, so thank you. I really appreciate every single one of you, and if you're listening, I really appreciate you as well. That's all I've got for this week, though. I hope that you all have a safe, peaceful, productive week, and I'm hoping for one of those myself at some point, but time will tell. No matter what, though, I'll see you next week for episode 76. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off.
Hey, Bradley, I figured out what's wrong with your fridge.
Oh, really, Arnold?
Yeah, the mother is missing.
Are you sure? It was there last when I checked.
Yeah, well, I may have ripped it out when I couldn't figure out the problem.
Okay. Thanks for trying to help, Arnold.
Hey, can we get a new fridge with a protein shake maker?
You mean a blender? We could just get a blender.
No! I want it to be in the fridge.
Okay. I'll see what I can do.